All right. Yeah, my wife just came home from lunch, and I was like, so I just wanted to tell her, like, don't make any big noise.
Yeah.
I think everyone makes a lot of noise they don't know they're making. Like, it's just part of living.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, I got my studio, and I actually have this studio in the back of my mom's house, because that's where I start. When I was, like, a kid, like a teenager, I started building it here, and, like, I can't, like, as a teenager, you can't move it anywhere when you move out because you usually go to like an apartment or something, you know? Right. So it's like, why ruin a good thing? I was like, can I keep it here? Can I just keep this? Because it's a big room. Like it's almost as big as my whole apartment anyway. So, you know, like she's here a lot too. And I gotta remind her too, like, okay, I'm recording now. I need to like, you know, I know it's your house, but can I get some quiet, please? You know, I don't.
Yeah, and it's just big noise, right? Like blenders and like pounding on the floor. Or, I don't know why.
What I don't know if you're in Colorado, right?
Yeah, Colorado Springs.
Yes, so I don't know if you have like the bug problem we hear, but here, like in Chicago, like during like the spring or so, we have cicadas outside, and they make this like rear, and it just penetrates through like walls, through soundproofing. I have to sometimes I have to schedule like sessions around that because like people can have lawnmowers outside going and shit, and you don't hear it or anything. But then as soon as those bugs start, like I could hear it in my headphones, and it drives me nuts.
Wow!
I don't know what it's just that piercing frequency. I don't know what it is about it. Like you can't get rid of it either.
Right? Someone should do a study on that. That's like a natural anomaly.
Yeah, I don't understand what it. I mean, I'm sure it is. Nature's made it that way so that it pierces through stuff so that the other bugs can hear it or whatever in trees or whatever.
Right.
You know. But yeah, I like to figure out like what that like frequency is and like find an app that can get rid of just that, like the background noise app, but for like bug noises or something. Yeah.
Maybe RX6 Advanced on RX7. They'll have a debugger.
Yeah.
Portion.
Maybe that would be. I'd pay for that. I'd buy that.
So, speaking of piercing through the noise,
yes,
that's kind of what this show does. This is the Podcast Engineering Show. Yes! Let's do this.
Oh, yeah.
We got Billy O here.
What's up?
This guy's bringing as much energy as me, perhaps more. Whew.
Oh, yeah. I'm psyched.
So, welcome everyone to the show. My name is Chris Curran. I produce podcasts for a living for the likes of Forbes and Dun & Bradstreet and E+ and select business authors. And each week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. Like it's almost like an audio platter, though. It's not a physical silver platter. We talk shop. We really do. And it's all about the audio engineering aspects of podcast production. We don't get into marketing. We don't get into listeners and downloads and none of that. All that stuff is really important, but that's not what this show is. This show is really, we try to get really technical and really try to make you sound better and to make you produce shows faster, actually. So I have a background in audio engineering in the music business, and since I entered podcasting about 5 years ago now, I noticed a huge lack of audio skills, and again, that's why this show is here. And that's so cool that I'm gonna formally introduce Billy O in a second, but he's an actual audio engineer who's worked on records and all that kind of stuff as well. So hopefully we're going to be able to go deep into the audio engineering aspects. Of course, Barry is with me. Barry, are you ready? I mean, I know I always ask you, but are you ready today?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Wait, why is his sound a little lower? Did you hear that?
I mean, I heard it about the same as you.
Yeah, because I don't know the level of the music in the beginning. Anyway, Barry's with me. Barry, are you ready to hear about, talk to Billy O and hear about what he's up to as far as his podcast and music production?
Oh, forget it.
I'm telling you, he's here. He's ready to go. He is the host of the Billy O Show, and he's an audio engineer and a mixer. He mixes records too. And Billy O, what's your website again?
Just go to thebillyoshow.com.
There you go. So welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, happy for you to be here. So you know that we start with the lightning round, and but before we get into the lightning round, which is we're going to overview your podcast production equipment and workflow really quick. We're going to overview it real quick, and then we're going to spend the rest of this session picking through it. Let me ask you this though: before you got into podcasting, how much audio equipment had you already amassed?
Well, okay, I could put it like this. My mom had to take out a higher insurance policy on the house because I had so much stuff here. She had to put like an extra 20 grand worth of like insurance on the house in case there was a flood or something. Yeah.
I can picture the insurance adjuster walking through there going, oh my God.
Yeah. And it fluctuates because once, like, when I started out just doing music production and everything, I had one set of gear like preamps and monitors and everything like that. Then when I got into like more dance music with more like synthesizer based stuff, I sold the preamps to get synths. And so I had synths. And then when I got into now I'm into podcasting, so I sold some of the synths to buy different microphones, so it evolves over. It's like it's a whole different process every time. So you gotta upgrade the equipment to suit the process that you're using it for.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's things you've held on to for a long time as well, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, well, the computers and stuff, like, you gotta update anyway, just because technology,
Right.
So you can't have a computer that's like 8 years old, now.
I know my main production computer literally basically just turned 4. So I'm kind of, but it's a beast. So I'm kind of like,
yeah.
I know I have a little more time, but I'm going to have to, I'm not looking forward to it. Build a whole new, get a new computer and then switch over all the software and all the licenses.
You use a PC or?
Yeah, PC.
Okay, yeah, well, PCs I think are a little more like suited to like upgrading and putting in new stuff than like a Mac is, like I use,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about getting a Mac, I was almost thinking of getting a desktop, like a Mac desktop, which I'm not even a Mac guy, but I'm like, you know what? What if I just get a Mac, because it's, there's a lot more, supposedly it's a lot easier to do a lot of audio things with Macs.
Oh, yeah.
And then if I get a desktop or whatever you want to call it, like those have a lot more power. So I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to talk about it now, but I definitely have to go through this process of like, what is it that I want to actually buy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting a Mac desktop soon. Like, I'm going to be coming into some money in a little while. And that's, I used to have a PC way back when I started, but once I switched over to Mac, I never looked back. It was just so much better.
Right.
But that was a while ago now. I think most of the technology now is caught up where like both are, you can get an equivalent in either format. Nobody's, head and shoulders above the other one anymore.
Right. And that's the thing. Like some of the processing I'm doing with like RX6 and Ozone 7, like sometimes if it's like an hour episode and I'm like either leveling it or mastering it, like it'll take like 10 minutes for it to process, which,
yeah,
I mean,
the one thing that just annoyed me and still annoys me, I don't know, I just wish all the companies would get together, like Pro Tools and Logic and all of them, and they're like, hey, let's just use one plug-in format. Like this, you got Pro Tools, you got Artez, Audio Suite, whatever. You go to Logic, you got audio units. Then you got your VSTs, and you buy a plug-in for one program, and you can't use it on the other one because it's and that's the most annoying thing I think about that.
It really is, and that goes for everything. That goes for phone, the operating systems and phones and devices. Like, oh man. And thank God, well, I heard they might change it again, but remember the phone chargers? Like every time you bought a new phone, you'd have to literally get a new charger because they changed the little...
Yeah, the iPhone now, like I've had iPhones for the last couple of generations, and they've changed the charger twice, I think.
Oh.
So, I mean...
See, Android has been stable for probably like 5 or 7 years, I think. I think at one point they're like, all right, everyone just use the same damn connector, and then so you don't have to buy everything new. Oh. So let's get into your podcast production workworkflow. So this is the speed round. So just go over it pretty quick. So when you're about to sit down and record an episode, and you got a mic in front of you, just tell us like what mic is it, where does the signal flow, where does it run into, and how do you record it?
Yeah,
take us through the chain.
So my first thing, microphone that I'm talking into, and the other two I have here are just SM7Bs, right? Dynamic microphone. I'm sure you've had probably somebody else use that one already.
Yeah, common, I have one
right?
too.
Yep. That goes into a Focusrite. I believe it's a Sapphire Pro 40 that I bought for this because it has 8 inputs. So I figured it's always good to have more in case you got extra guests or whatever here.
Yeah.
That goes in. Then just from there, I like a nice basic signal flow into the computer where I do all the processing from there. It's a MacBook Pro, and that the session actually saves onto what I think is important, an external drive. It's not on the actual computer. I save it onto a Lacy D2 Thunderbolt drive. I save all my sessions and everything on a separate external drive. It's easier on, the computer that way. It's not doing all of the bringing up the, data in real time from the hard drive. It's actually trying to record to as well. It's, easier that way for it. I learned that when I started recording back in studios. They would always say, install an extra drive into your computer to save all your samples, all your, session files on, because if you're trying to draw the audio from the same hard drive you're recording onto, it's way, it's a whole lot more work for that particular, hard drive. And you're asking for trouble if you do that.
Right.
And I've never had problems ever since when I was doing that, I was having problems, but then as soon as I installed an extra drive for my samples, an extra drive for my, my audio and stuff, and it drew off of that, it never had another problem after that. It was a lifesaver.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, so you recorded on the external drive, and then what software do you use?
Right now I'm using Logic Pro X for recording. Once I get my bigger, better desktop computer, I'm going to switch back to Pro Tools again, I think, just because I started in Pro Tools and I'm still in love with it. Cool. Pro Tools, because Pro Tools is basically still, if you're going to record for recording, it's like the de facto, go-to for most major studios, or
right.
Because that's what it's made for, because, Logic and Ableton and all these other ones, they have other uses like production, if you could write music with it, but Pro Tools, for the most part, it started out as a recording software, and that still, I think, is where its power is.
Right.
It's all the functions of it sort of revolve around that, and I just think if you really sit down and learn it, it's the most efficient, best tool for that. So
yeah, and certainly the most high quality, with all in terms of all the extra hardware you might need, or the interfaces and stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, because Logic and Ableton, they don't have they don't have hardware you could buy for Logic or
right.
Ableton. Pro Tools is really the only one. And now that they're Avid, I think they have deals with other people too, like Focusrite or whatever, where you can integrate that stuff into it. I remember back when they used to be DigiDesign, back in Pro Tools 5, it was, you could only use the DigiDesign interface, and that was it. You couldn't use anything else. Yeah, when I first got my first one was a Digi 001, and you couldn't substitute that for anything else. That was when it was Pro Tools LE. That was the only thing you could use, was that box. And everyone got all upset about that, I guess, enough where they switched it after a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What year was that? Around what year?
Let me think. Well, I got my Pro Tools certification in 2004, so that was probably 2001.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a while. Yeah, that was I was lucky enough where the first recording rig I ever had was Pro Tools. It was a 001 I bought off eBay, I believe.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I left the big studios in '96, they were just starting to a lot of times they would still record onto analog tape, but then they digitize it into Pro Tools for mixing, and then it got to the point where some guys would have some of the old school engineers would actually have another engineer in the control room to run the Pro Tools rig. Yeah, and just do certain edits in there, and then the main mix engineer would obviously just mix it on the console, kind of thing.
Yeah, the thing that when I went to school for my recording or whatever, my one instructor, Chuck Kwall, who taught me most of what I know, he was saying how he'd have people who would insist on using analog tape because they want that analog tape sound. They got to have the analog tape. And then he's okay, so we recorded on analog tape, and then what do you do when you have a final mix and you're ready to do it? You print it to a CD, and it's digital anyway then. Yeah. It's he's so, okay, you went through all that trouble to record on analog, which costs more too. You spent all that money because you want that sound, but it's just turning into ones and zeros in the end anyway, so was it really worth it to do that? Right. Well, certainly it does make some difference, but is it worth that difference? Exactly. That's the question. Mm-hmm. Because even now, there's tape emulation plugins. I bought the one, or it came with a bundle or something. The one, Abbey Road, the Abbey Road plugins. There's one that's a tape emulation plugin. I've used it a few times. Yeah, and they give you the little sometimes the little crackles in there or something. You can add that if you want. Mm-hmm. If you want. I don't know. My whole job is making sure there isn't crackles. But go ahead, tell me to add that in after I go through all the trouble to not do that. No, that's fine. You never know, Billy. You might have a client someday. It's you know what I want? I want that old Abbey Road crackle sound. Yeah. Okay, just wrinkle up some paper near the microphone when you're recording. It's probably easier. Yeah.
Right?
But yeah, so
Yeah, crinkle up some paper and crank it through a mic pre-distorted, and that's fine.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so you're recording into Logic Pro, and I assume you're just mixing in Logic Pro as well.
I mix mostly in Logic Pro right now. Yeah, because I got all my plugin suite on there and everything that I use. I've noticed a lot of people on here that you've interviewed. A few interviews I've heard people say they like for podcasting they put a gate like on their signal chain when they're recording.
Yeah,
I don't recommend that. I mean that could cause problems. That's like that. It's most. I mean the whole like philosophy like engineering wise, if you're recording like if you're, at least when I'm doing music or whatever, is you want the signal chain as basic as you can. You don't want to add anything you can't take away because then you can't take it away later if you don't like it. You know, it's like it's stuck on there then like. People like, especially reverb. Don't ever like,
right?
Yeah. Don't ever print reverb to a track. That's blasphemy. You don't do that.
I hear you, man. I agree with you about the gating to tape. I've always said that, and most people agree. But you know, it's interesting in podcasting. There are people who like. I don't know how to say it, engineering podcasts and like the equipment you hook up. And like, there've been a few people in the podcasting industry who've really influenced that a lot, and they're not audio engineers. And so they did recommend certain things like gating to tape, and most people and the people who were learning from them, they didn't know any better. And so now it's up to you and me, Billy. We got to,
And like, I wrote down here a couple like little tips that to give somebody who's doing this to like that they might not think about, like that I've learned over the period of my engineering that you might not think of. Like, say you have someone in here like recording, whether or not you have a condenser or a dynamic, which you know have obviously very high differences in sensitivity. Yeah. If they have jewelry or anything like that, tell them to take it off, like bracelets or anything that can cling and chang when they're moving around. Like you want them to take that off while you're recording because that will get picked up by their microphones for sure. Wow. Like I've had many takes ruined that were great because they like move their hand and you can hear the jingle of the bracelet or something like that. And especially in something like podcasting where it's all talking and you're using your voice a lot. Maybe abstain from drinking milk or eating anything with dairy beforehand that builds up phlegm in your throat where you're going to be clearing your throat a lot. You know, it's going to be. Yeah, like a lot of like whenever I went into like a big studio setting where it was like, you know, where time is money, you're there to like, you know, do it and get it done. Right. They would always tell you, you know, if you got a singer coming in, you got anything like that, don't be drinking milk, don't be eating cheese sandwiches or anything beforehand because that's going to, you know, build up phlegm in your throat and you're going to be clearing your throat. It's not going to be good for the vocal takes, you know? Right. So water, you know, Gatorade or something like that, you know, something not dairy that's going to affect your voice when you're doing the actual session, you know? Right. Tea and lemon is okay, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tea and lemon. Yeah. Something like that. Just anything without dairy in it. That's going to. Got it. Dairy is the culprit for that sort of stuff, you know? Like I said, the dedicated external drive is always a good thing to have for like that sort of stuff. Especially for podcasting too, when you're doing like a vocal thing like this, the term "eat the mic" comes up a lot. Yeah, you know, mic distance is always like one of the most important things, especially with this when you have like multiple mics set up close to each other. Like if you're doing like a conversational podcast, right? Like in the same room, like I do. Like I always gotta don't be afraid to tell them like put the mic closer to your face, like right up close to it, you know, distance, so you don't have to have the mic cranked up to hear them, and it's picking up you then too on their mic, right? You know, pay attention to polar patterns in your mic. I don't think a lot of people look at that. Yeah, hold on a second. So you have a studio there. You actually have a bunch of mics set up, and you have people come in and you all record together right there, right? Yes, I do. Okay. So what is just describe the space in general for us then. The space, we sit at a table. I'd say the table is about 7 foot by 3 foot. It's got enough room for like 4 or 5 people to sit at right now. I've got 3 mics set up because usually I'll have 1 or 2 guests and me. Got it. I have 1 mic directly across from me so that like the back of one microphone is like aligned to the back of the other one, just to like avoid picking up as much noise as possible from that 1 mic. Right. And then we got another guy sitting at the one end of the like the rectangular table that's off to the side. I try to like, you know, if I'm using both microphones and me 3, I try to get the mics so that like they're picking up as little of, you know, each other as possible. When you have 3 mics, there's going to be a little bit more ambient noise just because you have 2 other mics picking up what little noise, it is going to get from my microphone or someone else's mic.
Right.
It's a little harder, but like other than that, I do have a little bit of soundproofing on the walls, like on the wall closest to us. The other 2 walls, I got a little futon for guests who aren't, if they bring someone, they can sit on the futon or whatever as long as they're quiet while we're recording. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The room isn't an entirely square room, which would be like death for like reflections or whatever. It's 2 right angles on the room, and then there's a closet area that pokes out a little bit, which breaks up the one area, which helps for sound reflections a little bit. I can open up the closet if I have to. I got bass baffles in the corners to sort of break that up. Yeah, so that helps a little bit. I got my little rack next to me where I sit that's got the preamp on it and everything like that all the cable management is also kind of important too, because you want to make sure they're nice and neat and organized, so if like a guest is like moving around his chair, he doesn't pull out the mic cable on accident,
Right.
Like, yeah, so that'll happen if you're not careful, because you usually want to wrap it around the mic stand or something just in case they do pull on it. It'll just pull on the mic stand. It won't pull out of the mic, actually. That helps a lot.
I'm glad to hear that you're a little nutty with cables too, because that's how I am. I think anyone who comes from a studio, the cable, like having neat cables and tidiness is like it's so important. It's not, you can't even describe.
Mm-hmm. Label the cables too. If you got a big studio with lots of cables going, like if you got like an SSL setup in there and you got 50 channels of stuff and cables, and you don't have or whatever, label label the ends of the cables, like cable 1. So that when you go all the way to the other end of that cable, the other end is labeled 1 too. So you're not searching through 30 cables to know which,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What kind of you're on an SM7B? Are the other mics also SM7Bs?
These 2, yeah, they're all SM7Bs right now.
Okay.
If you're not recording like a conversational, like sit here and talk with other people podcast like I am, if you're recording more like a Radiolab's popular. Everyone kind of knows Radiolab. One of those ones where you're where it's just one person recording themselves talking for like a more produced type of show.
Right.
Maybe go with a condenser mic, because you can actually you're not listening to other people talk at the same time. It's just you. You can focus on that, and you can get that a little, maybe I'd say a little better quality sort of in the end.
Right.
That way. Like when I used to do vocals, I didn't use when I would record like singers or whatever, I wouldn't use my an SM7B. I had I believe it was a Rode K2, like a tube condenser mic, large diaphragm, and I had that going into like an Avalon M5 or whatever, like a little higher end. Yeah, like a little higher end mic, because the vocals are the ones you really want to have the high end equipment on,
right?
For the most part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I used to have a red Focusrite Red. I don't know which one it was, but it was the mic pre and compressor.
Yeah,
the physical 2-rack space unit, and it was good because I would bring that to whichever studio I was working in. I'd bring it because usually they didn't have a mic pre of that high quality. So
the vocals are the only ones I would need. You would typically need a really super high quality mic like that for in a normal music recording setup, like a band recording setup.
Right.
I mean, for headphones wise, like when I'm recording here, for monitoring or listening, like while the show is going on, I just use your typical Sennheiser, I think the HD280s, and then I actually mix my podcast now on headphones as well. But those are from our Sennheiser HD700s. Those are the higher quality ones, and those I was actually really surprised with how well those work for mixing at least the podcasts and stuff. I haven't tried mixing a full session on those yet. I got them just for mixing the podcast, because once I tore down my recording rig for doing actual sessions on, like the monitors went down with it, and I decided to just see if these headphones would work out well.
Right.
So far they've done pretty good with it. I'm really surprised. I didn't think headphones, because I've never mixed on headphones of that high quality before, and I was really surprised at how well they do on that, because you actually hear a lot of detail you don't get from like a lower end monitor even.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've been wondering that, because people have been asking me in the podcast engineering school, the last batch we did, students don't have, the money to buy powered monitors with the speaker stands and set up a mixing station, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's just a lot easier to just buy headphones, and they're kind of asking me well, what headphones should I buy? And, look, there's a zillion headphones and a zillion different prices. So, I kind of told them what I use Not for mixing. I just use those AKG K240s just as regular headphones. But yeah, so the HD700s, Sennheiser HD700s, I might have to check them out.
Yeah, those are. I mean, when I bought them new, they were like $800 when I bought them new. But they came out with a new model now, like the 750s or whatever. So they're a lot cheaper.
Oh, okay.
If you go and look and find them, I mean, monitor wise, like I used to have, your NS10s, the Yamaha NS10s. Right. Well, the NS10Ms, and yep. I know everyone always says like those are the ones you got to have like for the final, like if they sound good on those, they sound good anywhere,
Yeah.
I didn't like them at all. Yeah. I got rid of them pretty quick. I wasn't a big fan of it. Maybe just because at that particular time I was doing dance music, which was really like bass heavy. You needed to hear that bass, and for that I was just like, I can't use that for these. So I got rid of those pretty quick. And when I went and got my Pro Tool certification a while ago, the studio I went to, it was in a major studio, and they had M Audio BX5s, which are like maybe like $200 a piece or something, like cheap, speakers in there. I'm like, what's the deal with those? He's like, I heard these at like someone else's studio, and like I couldn't believe how good they were for the price. He's like, he had like a 7.1 surround setup with them or whatever, and I was like, yeah, because he mixed like movies in there and stuff like that. He's like, and I use these for mixing now. He's like, I can't believe how good they are for like, because they're real thick, sturdy little. They're not as big as a normal, studio monitor would be like the NS10s. They're like half the size of the NS10s. Oh. But he's like, but they got such a deep, like a good resonance or whatever in them.
Right.
He's like, so I went out and I actually bought a pair, and I used those for a long time. I thought for the price, they can't. At least the old models. They came out with a new model now. And I know with monitors, when they change around the models, it's usually because they do something different with them. And I can't speak for the new models, but the older classic models of the BX5s I loved. And I still have a pair at my apartment that I use for like checking things that I've done and everything that are great.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So when you record 3 or more mics in person like that, what kind of post-production do you do to remove the bleed from mic to mic? Okay, so when I'm recording 3 people like I do this here, my actual this is still something I'm toying with, because this is still sort of, I've never, like in my other stuff that I do, I don't have 3 mics that people are talking at the same time. That's the one thing I've never done actually, in all the recordings that I've done. So what I've been doing recently that I've been trying, and I like how it works, is I will, like, how when we started this, my mic was really low. Right. When we did this, and I like right now, the pre for this mic is all the way up to 10, like for this, and this is, so like these mics are not like super strong, and the preamp isn't super strong. What I've been doing is I make sure they eat the mic, they're really close to the mic, hit it up. I turn the level to like maybe a 5, so that it's really only picking up what's close to the mic, like their mouth or whatever. And it really helps with like not catching the noise floor is like, at a point where it's not catching a lot of the reflections, stuff like, and the tape. And so I've got 3 mics at about like a 5 each. And I don't like, when I got 3 people here, I don't even use headphones for listening, because we're right next to each other. We hear each other. It's no point in putting headphones on. Right. And I just, when they're done, like when I actually play back the session, like, of course, everything sounds kind of low because I've got the mics so low. I just put a little bit of gain on each one, like enough gain to where it's like the normal, like I think it's like -19 or something. Oh, right. Where they normally do it, and I boost it up to that, and the noise floor was low enough when I do that, where like even when you gain it up like that, you're not getting a lot of the reflections or anything. Oh, nice. And I've got this plugin that I found that I am in love with now. I don't even use compression for this anymore. I use Wave's Vocal Rider. Have you ever used this? Oh, yes. That's one of my tricks, my tricky tools. I use that. I have a preset channel strip on Logic now, and that is part of it. I just load it up automatically onto it with I use a standard gain first, like just the gain plugin that comes with Logic, and I gain it up to the point where it needs to be. Then I'll use a FabFilter Pro Q2, the EQ, which is like my favorite EQ in the world now. Oh, okay. It's great. Yeah, because I like how it's got the analyzation in the background where it like analyzes the wave. You can see like the peaks and valleys of all the frequencies. It kind of helps a little bit when you're like trying to get like a little. One thing I have done that I'm not going to do anymore in my processing is that I'm so used to, when you're doing like a voice in like a song or whatever, you always like cut below, like, if it's a guy, you cut everything below like 180 or 200, and then you try to fit it into that like upper middle area of the EQ sandwich for the
So I was doing that for the first like 9 episodes of my show. Like I was cutting 180, doing like the normal, like it sounds good, like if it was going to fit into a thing.
Right.
But I thought about it. I'm like, wait a minute. There's nothing else here. I don't need to cut all that out anymore. It's like I can leave that in, and it won't be clashing with anything. So from now on, I'm going to try to not do that. I'm going to leave like the lower end in there. Maybe take a little bit out, but like and the rule usually with EQ is you cut wide, like the Q setting. If you're going to cut something, cut wide, cut out like a wider swath, and you peak, you boost thin, like the Q setting real thin, so you're not like boosting a whole big wide frequency. You're just cutting out a little area of the whatever frequency you want, so it fits in there nicely.
Right.
And that's another thing. When you're mixing podcasts, I don't know if you need to do that because there's nothing else you're trying to fit it in with. You might be able to get away with a little wider like spectrum if you want to. Like it's something to mess around with. Every voice is different too, so
yeah,
it's like
Well, one of the things the EQing skills comes in real handy when you're producing podcasts is not for like you and your two buddies when you're sitting around with SM7Bs, but it's like when you connect with someone on the internet who's in China who's using earbuds and doesn't know how to use a mic and doesn't whatever. It's like you especially with guests, some of the audio that you're going to record is really not good, and it actually does take some like serious hard work to get it to sound acceptable. Really,
that was my job for a while when I was because I would do mixing jobs for people where they would record it at someone's house. And then they'd send it to me, and it's like, okay, can you make this sound good now? And I'd be like, I can make it sound better. I mean, better and good are two different things. And people don't understand. Like, you can't just there's no program that makes it sound perfect. Like, if you don't record it well, it's not going to sound well in the end. There's only so much technology can do in that respect. You can make it EQ it and make it sound a little better, but you're still just like, at least in my school, they used to say garbage in, garbage out. Like, you can't use like a webcam mic to record something and then like expect it to sound like, like you've got a U87, stuck in front of them or something. It's not going to work. Yeah,
I will say though, RX6 Advanced is the RX isotope stuff is just getting sick because just last night there's a new one in RX6, a new module called I think it's mouth declick or something. It takes out mouth clicks. It's unbelievable how this thing just does it like so transparently. And so this is something I would do previously is like I would spend a long time going through a podcast episode for certain clients and for some of my own shows, and like just literally zooming in and deleting little mouth clicks just to get rid of them. But now this is just, oh my God, it makes it so much better. It's crazy.
Yeah, you can't do that on analog tape.
No, man.
That's wow. And the RX, is that part of the actual plugin, or is it a separate plugin from RX6? Or is it just an update for it?
Well, no. So I'm talking about RX6 Advanced. It's just one of the modules in there. Like I know RX like 6 regular.
Yeah.
It doesn't that like Advanced has some more features, but I don't know which ones it had. If you go to the Isotope website, you could see. But I wouldn't. I mean, if for anyone who's serious about audio production, I mean, definitely I would just buy RX6 Advanced because there's so much in there that is so worth it.
Yeah. I mean, and I used to be pretty on the side of like hardware would always sort of be better than software, but I don't think I'm thinking that way anymore. Because the more I've used these plugins, the more I've experimented and like A/B'd like hardware. And I really think that the plugins now are getting to the point where like it's just as good as the hardware equivalents almost, with the exception of like an SSL board or a Neve board or something like that. I don't really know if you're ever going to get that particular level of quality out of like a $100 plugin. But a lot of the other stuff is coming pretty close. They're doing a pretty good job now.
Yeah. And what you're talking about is like for EQ and compressors, and like instead of having a physical EQ and compressor and twisting knobs, you're talking about that the plugins they're making now are just as good a quality, maybe even better in some ways. So.
Yeah, I mean, I just said like the SSL and whatever, you might not ever be able to get that particular sound out of that, because that hardware sound is what everyone's looking for or whatever. But one of my favorite plugins that I actually use a lot for like musical stuff or whatever is the actual Waves SSL channel plugin that they have, where it's supposed to be like an emulation of like the G series console, I think it is on there. And that one I use a lot for like when I'm doing music stuff, because that actually sounds great on it. It's on its own. Like it's got its own particular great sound. Whatever they did on there was awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
The SSLG is I don't own that plug. That's a plugin I would want, but I don't quite need it, so I haven't bought it yet. But they also make they've emulated I think it's the E series as well.
Yeah, they've got a couple. Yeah,
okay, so anyway and it's so funny. Like the G came after the E, but is it really better? You know, like it's this. Yeah.
And then they have the G/E consoles actually too, like where they combine the two together.
Really?
It's weird.
I remember on the E consoles, it was like something with the low frequency on the EQ was different than the G series. In the E series, it was like better. It had like one of those little buttons that had a bell curve on it or something.
I think that was exactly. It had like a push-pull pot on it that you could like change it around.
Right.
I think that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, because I know guys who at Soundtrack they always preferred Studio E, which had an E series SSL, just because of that. So
yeah, and that's another thing that you might want, that I'd like to point out to people. Don't get caught up. Like, there's so many plugins out there now and so many different things you can use. Like, I got, like, the first couple sessions I did on this, and I call them sessions. I know you call them episodes.
No, I call them sessions, but then I mess up and call them episodes from time to time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. But my thing is the episode is the finished product of the session. The session is what you make the episode in.
Right.
And when you're done, when you mixed it and everything, the final file you export is the episode.
Right.
It's like the product of the session. But yeah, like me, I open up my plugin thing here, and there's like 100 different plugins, and I spent like literally an hour going through plugins trying to find the best one, and that can get really like time consuming, and like you waste a lot of time if you're not careful. If you've got the choice, I want to say like the burden of choice for plugins. Like, you've got so many to go through, and then you're all, and before you know it, 2 hours have gone by and you haven't even done anything because you're looking at all the, you've tried out 50 different plugins with all these presets. And it's like, it really can kill your time. Like if you're on like a schedule and you got stuff to do, that could really like, throw you off. So like find something that you like and stick with it is what I usually do. Like,
right.
There's some plugins I've got on here that I've never even looked at yet because I like the ones that I've got. And one day when I have like the time to sit down and actually mess around with it, maybe I'll use it on an old session or something and try them out and see if I like them. But for now, I know what I like. I know what works good for the time being for what I want to do. And I stick with those.
Right.
That way you're not like wasting all your time going through presets, going through different, plugins, going through whatever. And I'm not sure if that's, because I know a lot of people use like Audacity, they said, and all that stuff. And I'm not sure how the plugin situation works with those programs. I'm not sure if they have like suites or whatever for those. Like, I'm not sure if that's an issue people deal with on that.
Yeah, I think it is actually. In fact, I just had someone who was talking to me about possibly enrolling in the podcast engineering school in the fall, which September. It should be starting in September, or maybe I shouldn't have said that because maybe I'll change my mind by the time this airs. But no, someone actually asked me about plugins, like what are some good plugins to get? And so to answer your question, yeah, most programs like Reaper, like free programs like Reaper and Audacity, they do have built-in processing, and even SoundForge Pro, which I use as my detail editor, it has built-in. It has every effect you could want built in. The only problem is the quality is not that great, right? Because it's just built into some software. So, but my answer to this person was with plugins, and I wonder if you agree with this. I said, in general, the price tag will sort of tell you the quality. And I know that's a big generality, but I know like Waves sells a lot of plugins for like $19 and $29. And I just know that if you buy an EQ plugin for $19, it's not going to be as good as the one that's $150. I mean, I think you can safely say that.
Yeah, you get what you pay for most of the time. And it's like, with the exception of, I know Waves will bundle like all of their plugins together. Right. And like give it like the Mercury bundle or whatever bundle like that. And then you'll get a discount on it that way. But for the most part, if you're buying them individually, yeah, of course, you're not gonna get, because I mean, if it was better, they'd probably charge more. I mean,
Right. Have you ever tried the it's called the Sheps 73? It's this engineer Andrew Sheps, he came up with a plugin. I think it's through Waves. Yeah, he partnered with Waves, and it's a emulation of a Neve 1073 EQ with the actual mic pre as well. Have you heard that one?
I actually think that's one of the ones I have on here that I haven't tried yet.
Oh, really?
I think I do have that. Yeah, I've seen it. I've gone through it, and I've seen the Neve console looking plug-in on it, but I haven't used it yet. Yeah, but I do have it.
Yeah, I've used it a bunch of times. I have it. It's in my, like, when I open up a session to mix it, like, I actually apply a signal. It's like a blank signal chain where to each track, and then I go through and I pick which effects I want to use, and that's always in there. And I got to say, the high end, because on the EQ, the high frequency is set at 12K. It's just a gain knob. The high frequency of the 1073.
Really?
It's set at 12K, and that's it. It's either boost or cut, and it's just really nice airy sound. It's like really nice air.
See, and that's odd because most of your cheaper modules or cheaper mixers, whatever you have, those are the ones that would have a set frequency that you can only boost or gain. That's like that's kind of weird that it would have that.
Yeah. Well, so then on the low end of the Sheps 73, the low end, you can choose between, I forget, maybe 4 or 5 different frequencies. But the low end is just so smooth. Like, oh man, it's just like when you add like 60 hertz, or I think 60 is one of the frequencies, or 110. I think 110 is another frequency selection. The low end is just so smooth and nice. But I don't know. A lot of times in podcasting, like it's you don't need that. You don't need the super high end. It's not like it's not like background vocals where you want to add a nice air and some real low end to make it separate from a lead vocal kind of thing. Like it's just you just don't need to do that in podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. It's the podcasting is more like it's the ratio of material to sound quality is off compared to a band recording or whatever.
Right.
It's more important when you're recording a band or you're going into a studio to record like an actual album or whatever, that everything sounds a certain way so that it's cohesive and it works. But like when you're just when you're doing like an educational podcast or something like that, it's just a show. You're trying to teach people to learn. As long as they understand what you're saying, maybe you don't have to have the highest quality of the recording. It's more of a as long as my goal is met through the podcast, I'm not really worried about the quality of it as long as you're still learning from it,
Right. Yeah, that's why, handling bad audio from guests is the trick. So you can have people in your studio there, but you're not having any guests over the internet or phone, are you?
No. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this over the phone or anything, because usually like this thing I like whatever you're using, I hear you like you're sitting here or whatever. Right. Anytime I hear a show and the guy, you hear like this on the thing because they're on the phone.
Skype.
I can't listen to that. I can't. I have to turn it off. It's something. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me. As an engineer, I can't deal with that.
It's brutal. Most of the time it's Skype.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, so I've never had so far, I've never had any occasion to do so because I don't want to have that sort of thing going on.
Yeah, well, we're using Zencastr, which is the sort of the multi-track cloud recording service that I'm loving these days. And it's really good. You can connect, technically, I think you can connect unlimited people, although Josh from Zencastr tells me that if connecting 5 or 6 has been done a lot, and that's okay, but if you connect like 10 or more, like each participant is fed all the other participants. So then it becomes a bandwidth issue. If someone is sitting at home in Missouri and they're on Wi-Fi and they need, let's say there's 10 people on the session, so 9 people's voices have to come through their Wi-Fi to them, that might cause a problem.
And plus when you're doing something like this, I guess internet is like, because every now and then your internet might go out, something like that. It's kind of scary thinking about that. I know I've had a couple times where I've been doing something on the internet, whatever, and it just goes out.
Yeah.
Like, you're watching a movie or something or on Netflix and it goes out, and I'm just like it makes me pull my hair out thinking about that happening during a session or something, you know, like, oh God. Like, because that's something that's really out of your control. If like, you know, you're now depending on like Comcast or whatever to keep their service going, you know.
Dude, you're not even doing it, and you're feeling my pain, and I feel you feeling my pain. Yeah, man, you're at the mercy of the internet. Now, I'm wired in through Ethernet cables and everything, and I recommend all my hosts when I produce shows for other people. I recommend all the hosts like plug in, you know, put a Ethernet cable into their computer. Like, don't be on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But guests, another story, my friend, because they don't know anything. They don't usually care about sound quality. They just think, you know, most of them, or some of them at least, think they're rock stars, and they're just going to lay on their couch and connect through an iPad without any microphone or earbuds. And it's like, dude, we're trying to actually sound good. Can you help us out here a little bit? But, you know, it's all good. And look, that's our job as podcast engineers, is to take that audio and make it sound good. That's why I like Zencastr, because and services like this, because for instance, on my end right now, you've glitched a couple times. Like some words got stretched and glitched. But after we're done, I'm going to download a file from Zencastr. It's going to be it's a local recording of you.
Okay.
Without you even knowing that it's being recorded locally. So I'm going to get a clean copy of you. And so the guy laying on the couch with his iPad, I'm going to end up downloading a clean copy of that guy anyway.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I assume like there's the thing you're hearing right now is streaming to me, but it's also recording a hard copy somewhere that they could send you, right? Like on a drive somewhere.
What it's doing is, for you right now, it's recording you locally on your computer, and then every 30 seconds, it's uploading a chunk of the MP3 in the background.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's another good thing another tip while I'm thinking of it. Always be saving your sessions, and always. I don't know if it's as important with you know podcasts or whatever, but if you're in the middle of a podcast and you're not like doing like what we're doing, just one long continuous thing, and it's like a bunch, you're recording certain parts, then you save it in between. Every time you stop recording, Control S, save it every single time, or Apple S if you're using it. Don't ever not save something, because that will ruin your day. If like the power goes out, something happens, you unplug a cable, whatever. Always save after every time you press stop. It should be like a reflex, Control S or Apple S, save.
Totally, man. It's so funny how much in common we engineers have. I mean, when I'm editing, after every single edit I make and I listen back to it real quick, I'm like, that sounds good, Control S.
Yeah, exactly. Every time it's a reflex. Now, you just make it a reflex, so it's not even something you think about doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you do after you mix it and stuff? Do you do any type of mastering or any type of leveling, and how do you do it?
Usually, if I'm gonna do like a leveling, like the overall thing, I might even just do it on the output of like in Logic. I might actually just put like a limiter on the output of Logic,
right, on the mix
before before I bounce it, and that's usually what I'll do. And then afterwards, if I think maybe I could do a little bit more, I'll either import the file back into a different session and boost it up a little bit using whatever, another limiter like a LA2A or whatever, or like or I'll just go back into the regular session and just boost the volume on the actual output a little bit more,
right? And then re-render it
and rebounce it, yeah. And plus, it's always it once you get down to like when you're bouncing to MP3s or whatever to upload to iTunes, like with my Libsyn account or whatever, I have a certain amount of space I can use every month. So like if I have I did one episode that was like 3 hours long almost. Nice. And because of the space that it had, or because of the space it took up when I did it, because I don't like low quality stuff. Usually like a 160 MP3. I'll try to make like a 320 MP3 or something like that. Because awesome. it drives But like when it's a 3 hour session at 320, it takes up like half my data for the month. So I'm like, So I had to bounce it down to 160. And when you're doing like a 160 or whatever, the dynamics get a little off. It throws it off a little bit too, So you might have to go in and remix it for like a 160 or something, and it's
dude, mix down to mono 64, bro. Come on.
Like 8-bit, just Nintendo.
8-bit.
Yeah.
There was a guy in the Podcasters Society a while back who was literally, he recorded something and he needed to save it in some 8-bit format for some voicemail system where you can like upload your own voicemail message or something, like maybe a corporate voice messaging system, and it had to be a certain it had to be 8-bit, and I think it was 8 kilohertz. So anyway,
8 kilohertz.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I know. So anyway,
how does that work?
Well, it cuts off everything above 4K.
Okay. So you weren't talking about the sample rate. You were talking about like the EQ or whatever.
No, I'm talking about the sample rate. 8,000 kilohertz.
Oh,
sample rate. So yeah, it cuts off. It literally will, gets up. Will capture everything up to 4 kilohertz in the frequency, and above that, it doesn't exist. Well, that's like the phone too. The frequency response of phone calls is generally 300 hertz to 3,000 hertz.
Yeah, and you would think they'd have upgraded that by now in some way. Like the phone has not sounded different for like how long now? Like forever. Like it's still they're still using analog tape here. You got to upgrade to Pro Tools.
Yeah,
phone company.
I mean, the first phone call was like 1877 or something,
and still sounds exactly the same.
I just heard something. What was I listening to? One of these podcasts where they said that when the phone came out, it literally took like 30 or 40 years to catch on.
Yeah.
Like people just didn't get it. They're like, what is that? I don't know.
Yeah. Plus probably they had to build all the phone lines and everything to like for it to work.
Right,
probably.
right.
Oh. Yeah,
it was interesting. I think it was a song. Let me look it up on my phone because it's an audio book that I would like to mention because my friend Bryant Jackson recommended it to me, and yeah, and this actually applies. See, I'm adding value to hopefully. Anyway, it's a book. It's called Hitmakers, and I'm listening to the audiobook version, but it's called Hitmakers, and the subtitle is The Science of Popularity in an Age of Distraction. And this guy, Derek Thompson, is the author. And he talks about how songs become hits. I mean, he goes deep into not only the musicality of it, but the psychology. And there's so much, he does so much research and talking about history and giving examples. And that's where I learned this thing about the phone, that it took so long to take off. But anyway, Hitmakers is a really interesting book.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of recording it's psychological in a way. Like, for instance, I don't know if it was the last episode I listened to you. I think it was maybe one of your episodes where like you were talking about having the washing machine going in the background or whatever, and you couldn't hear it or whatever. But like, there's a psychological thing where like if you started recording and that washing machine was just a little faint in the background the whole time, like your mind goes through this thing where if it's there that whole time, it'll sort of like block it out. You won't even notice it. Like after a while, it's weird. And like, but if you go back and listen to it later, you're like, what the fuck? Why does that thing go in the back? But when you're actually processing something else and there's a constant noise in the background, it's just the background and your brain doesn't even process it the same way. It's weird. I'm sure there's a name for that, like effect or whatever. But like, yeah, if there's like a hum or whatever of like a furnace or a fan or whatever, it's there that whole time, your brain just assimilates to it. And that's just part of, the background then. And it sort of like blocks it out and you don't even hear it. And and you got to be careful about that. If you're like mixing something or you're doing whatever, you want to make sure you listen to it and then you take a break from it and you go back in a little while and listen to it again with a fresh set of ears and make sure, because you'll notice a whole lot more you didn't notice before when you assimilated your mind to it because you've been listening to it over and over for so long.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why in the studios, a lot of the mix engineers they'd work on a song all day and then they'd pretty much finish it, but they wouldn't print it. They wouldn't print it onto half-inch tape. They would go home, come back in the morning, and listen to it again, and of course, then tweak a couple things, and then print it to print it, and then they tell me, the assistant engineer, okay, switch over to the next song, and then it takes a while to switch over the whole session and normalize, zero out the board and everything like that.
Yeah. Before I ever like publish any episode or whatever, I'll always listen to it. Like I'll bounce the file or whatever, and then I'll put it on my phone and I'll go for a walk and I'll listen to it on my headphones just while I'm walking or whatever, and just listen to the whole episode to make sure that I didn't miss anything, or you can't hear anything different on the earbuds or whatever that most people are going to be listening to them on. Before I actually, then if everything sounds good, then I publish it.
Nice. Hey, I want to ask your opinion on something. So when you talk about the noise in the background, that if it's there the whole time, the listener just kind of gets used to it, and then they ignore it. But here's the thing: sometimes when guests connect to a podcast, it's really noisy, and in fact, sometimes it's the person's earbuds that are just inherently noisy. It's not even a noise in the room; it's just there's this white noise coming through the earbuds, and. So what happens is when you're mixing it, you can gate that out, but then when the person starts talking, then the noise comes in
the
again.
Background of their voice. Yeah.
So some people say, well, no, just leave the noise in there the whole time. And I get that because then the listener might ignore it. But first of all, that sounds like crap. And second of all, here's the big issue. Second of all, if that person was absolutely quiet when they were not talking and there was just noise, that's one thing, but people aren't quiet. They're either the earbud microphones flapping against their shirt, or they're putting a drink down, or they're typing on their computer.
Or the jewelry,
jewelry.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, a lot of times as a podcast engineer, we are forced to remove that audio when someone's not speaking. We literally just have to remove it because there's so much noise, but then you have the noise coming in and out when the person's talking, but I don't know. That's the best we can do, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do.
If we're talking like white noise or something, there might even be a plugin. I haven't checked in a while. There might be a plugin that you can remove white noise now or something. It seems like
I do use the denoise and I do remove as much as possible. You can never remove all of it because when you remove the noise, you're also
removing certain frequencies.
Yeah, you kind of make the voice sound worse too, so you can only do so much, but there's always
you could be proactive about it and add white noise to your track so they both sound the same. and that way it all sounds the same, and it sounds no one can tell the difference. If there's nothing to compare it to, then you don't know.
Or I'll just have the host say and we're recording today's episode near this waterfall, and then I'll just play a waterfall.
Just trick the mind into thinking that you're hearing nothing. Exactly.
It's not easy, man. I'm telling you. Someday, Billy, you're gonna get another computer, and you probably have to get a mixer at that point. And you're gonna have people in person, and you're gonna want to connect people over the internet, and then you're gonna have to go through the whole sound checking thing, which I teach in my podcast engineering school.
Yeah. I've recorded entire bands here in my mom's house. I've had a drum set out in the garage and ran 100-foot snake to the back of the house to the studio to record the drums in the garage. And it's a garage. It's not ideal for so I've dealt with all sorts of crazy I've dealing with noise and getting rid of as much noise as possible. I've had plenty of chances to work on getting rid of that stuff. It's and especially with guitar amps, real distorted guitar amps, when they're not touching the strings, you get that hum or the buzz or whatever. And and they don't understand, turn the knob down when you're not
Oh yeah, all kinds of fun stuff we deal with. So the BillyOShow.com, that's your website. By the way, the link will be in the show notes. And so just tell me a little bit about your show real quick.
My show so far, I've only done 8 episodes. It's been me basically talking interview style, like a Joe Rogan experience style, just getting I first wanted to do this as I was gonna make it sort of what you do, a more of a trade type subject thing where I talk to people in the music industry, get their view, learn something from them through the whatever. And then as the more I did it, I'm like, actually, I like this. I like just talking to people, sort of. So I started talking to people about other stuff. I did a show on anime. I did a show on trade shows. We have a convention here, like a cartoon convention or whatever. I've done a bunch of stuff like that. I've done a movie review episode. As I've done episodes, I've sort of evolved because once again, I like the idea that this is my show. I can do whatever I want, really. Yes. I don't want to be I have to do this. I have to make a format or whatever. So I'm thinking now I'm going to maybe try and change it up a little bit. I might get a co-host in here. I got somebody who I think might work well with a co-host. I might try that to get like a little dynamic going or something. Like this is my like personal like pet project. My my experiment that this is the first thing I've ever done where like I haven't been listening to someone else tell me what they want me to do and then I've had to do it. Like this is me actually finally being able to do something I want to do. So I'm trying to figure out what it is really that I want to do, while I do it. And so like I know I've never like as an engineer, you're not really like unless it's about like the quality of what you're recording, you're not really supposed to give your opinion on things. Like you can't really say like, oh, I don't like this or whatever. Like you're supposed to just make it sound good and you be quiet, So like I might do some like music review, like I might review some like albums or something as they come out and tell you like what I think of it, like if it was recorded well, if like the production's good on it or whatever, do something like that, and once I get this studio upgraded, like because right now I'm just using this laptop that I had already or whatever. Once I get my like tower going and everything, and I can really like get like a good studio environment going again, I'm gonna really like start putting out episodes as they come. But like for now, I got one episode I'm gonna put out like pretty soon about with my I guess I call them coworkers or my music production people that I work with, who actually one of them works at Ivy Think Lab, which is a music production school here in Chicago. I'm gonna be putting that out sometime probably this week. It's pretty cool. And yeah, so it's like it's gonna be whatever I want it to be. It's gonna be whenever I put out an episode, I want it to be something interesting, something someone's going to be able to learn something from, not just listen to it and be like, oh, well, okay, what was that about, Yeah. Like, so if I can't find a guest to come in or whatever, I want to still be able to talk about something to like give you something to, make sure you get something out of an episode or a session, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So that's basically going to be it. I want to make sure like quality over quantity basically is what I want. I don't want to just put out an episode because I have to put one out every week or whatever. If I can't find something that's worth like talking to or something that has some substance to it, maybe I'll wait a little bit and put out another one in like 9 days or something.
Yeah. No, you're in a great spot actually. I mean, it's your show. You're just having fun doing what you want to do, and you're figuring it out. In my experience, what happened to me is I started a bunch of shows with a bunch of different people, and just because I was figuring out what the hell I was doing, and most of them didn't stick around, but it's all good because the next show you start or the third or fourth show you start will be so much better. And plus, if you're doing it for the love and you're just doing it because it's fun and you want to and you love it, then that's all. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, exactly.
This whole thing about putting one out every week, I mean, or on a regular basis. I mean, there's something to be said for that, but I think that's in general. I mean, it does apply universally, I believe, because if people do like your show and you say you're going to do it every week, then you kind of should do it every week. But if you're kind of like, hey, it's just me having fun and, I don't do it every week. I do it whenever I'm inspired. And if you just say it like that, people know that and they don't expect anything more. So.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't set them up to expect that. That's the important part.
Yeah. That's it. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So everybody check out Billy O's show, and thanks for coming on the show, man. We're going to have to at some point do this again because I think I feel like we talked about a lot, but we went over things pretty quick, which I think is cool. But I think we could definitely have you back on the show, at some point in the future.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, thank you for listening. I hope you got a lot from this conversation. I know you did. Why do I even say that, right, Barry?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm telling you, Barry knows. Barry knows when you got something. Barry, did we talk about some good stuff this session? I almost said episode.
Oh, forget it.
Totally. All right, well, check it out. The podcastengineeringschool.com is our website. Podcast Engineering School is coming up soon, so check the website. And until next time, you know what to say, Billy O. Sound great!
Oh, yeah.
Walk away from me well, and you can't play that part so well. But you're playing out on me now. You like to lose control well. It's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you're fine. Yeah.